All right. Well, this is a forum that should be interesting to you guys, mainly because these people were you not very long ago. I will go down the line and have each of them introduce themselves, but just so you know, all of them are out in the world doing many of the various things that you may be doing. So please help me welcome Patrick Regan, Braden Piper, Daniel Ermas, and Tom Chichilla. That was a very warm round of applause for you guys. Could we just go down the line and have each of you talk about when you were here and when you graduated and what you're doing now or what you've done since then? That would be interesting. Patrick, I know a lot about you, but I don't know if everybody else does. So go ahead.
Well, I graduated from here in 2010, and for a year I was helping run what was then a startup called Rabbit Hole Consulting and is now called Black Rabbit Media Management.
And Rabbit Hole Consulting was like management services, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was basically like artist management, and also because of the overlap with sort of like small business, it was also sort of promotion for small businesses and web presence and that sort of thing.
And you hatched that idea kind of during senior seminar.
Yeah, that was
David, right?
Yeah, that was spawned in senior seminar, and David was in that class with me, who went on to become my business partner, and then another guy from Loyola, but from the graphic design program, was our third partner. Those two guys are still running that business full time.
Because you're doing what?
Now I'm in law school, which is delightful.
But he's a top law student. You gotta know he's a top law student. The guy's a top law student. Aren't you a top law student?
Whatever that means.
Yeah. Now, in all seriousness, he's making us all proud, and we'll hear more about what you're doing there in a moment. But you're in your second year of law school.
I am. Yeah.
Braden Piper. Braden was in this room a lot for forums. He did an awful lot of videography for us. But Braden, let us know what's up.
I graduated the same year as Patrick, 2010. And then right after school, as Billy said, I was doing a lot of video work. I was, the person behind the camera in the forum here. And I did there was a nonprofit based at Loyola called the Center for Music and Arts Entrepreneurship, and we did a lot of video work. I was doing that when I graduated, and then I got hired full-time, working with John Snyder as my boss. And I did that for about a year before I decided I kind of wanted to do something different and maybe move away from New Orleans after graduation. So I quit my job and went on a 3-week road trip around the southwest of America, and then I moved to St. Louis, where I was a volunteer teacher for a year, taught high school English, and I did that for a year and I was done and I needed a job, so I was emailing people, and I sent an email to somebody I knew in New Orleans, and I got offered the job that I have now, and so now I'm the director of operations at Basin Street Records, which is a local record label.
Right on. So we'll hear more about that soon. All right, Daniel.
I graduated in 2009, so I was part of that Hurricane Katrina year that moved in 2005. When I left here, for a couple years I ran a record label called Favored Nations. It's a guitar label. It's owned by a guitarist named Steve Vai. He's kind of well known in the guitar community, and ran basically all the physical product, pretty much everything. I had somebody helping me with digital, but Loyola Foundation, the foundation I got from these intro classes and my 4 years here as well, really helped me kind of move into that and
Right.
get that taken care of. So I'd done that for about 2 years.
Right. Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom. I graduated in 2008, and I've done a lot. I don't know how I could explain that the past 5 years in my life that quickly. But right now, I work for a bunch of punk rock bands full time, and I run my own booking agency. I employ 2 people, and I talk a lot of shit. Sorry, but no. My brain kind of works in weird ways, and I had a question, and so this might be inappropriate, but that dude who was just talking about Mud and Water in Baton Rouge, have you ever been there? Never? Has anybody been there? What's it like?
It's in a really weird area. Not what you expect.
I work for punk rock bands, so does that mean it would work for me? This is actually a really serious
Like a
question.
DIY venue? What is it? Is it a DIY venue? Is it indie?
It's like a new kind of bar. I don't know if it's like a punk rock scene, but maybe.
Okay, I had somebody.
So you never stop doing your research.
Never.
You're never not working.
Actually, that's the funny thing. The two people that work for me, one person has actual access to my database, and the other person is only research based.
Yeah.
For my agency, I do a lot of research, so it's a lot of sitting on the internet and.
Well, that's a great thing to talk about, because what we should talk about is kind of what day to day your lives are like, and rather than sort of start at the top again, why don't we stay with you, Tom? I mean, I know that you were a musician yourself,
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
Which musicians make the best agents, in my opinion. Every agent that I know.
But you can't do both.
Yeah, no.
Can't
But
do both.
ex-musicians make great agents because they have sympathy for the predicament of the musician.
Yeah, don't make that mistake. That is one that if you think you can do, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to fail, and I will laugh while you fail, and you come back to me later. If you think that you can tour as a musician and be a booking agent at the same time, you are sadly mistaken. You could do it for your own band, just don't do it for other bands. And that's kind of from experience. You'll end up screwing somebody over. And yes, 5 years after graduation, I have screwed bands over, but I have also made a lot of awesome connections and people that support me and people that now are my income.
So talk about your day-to-day then.
Day to day, I wake up whenever I want to. I make some coffee, sometimes take a shower, and I answer a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls. And I will, when I do travel, it's usually business related, where I'm going to tour, see a bunch of shows that I booked around the country or around the world. And sometimes that could be the fun part, but it is also work. And but really that's it. I control everything I do. I don't have to be anywhere at a certain time. Like just even being told I had to be at Forum at 4 o'clock. I think I showed up 30 minutes late. But I'm not really good I was never good at the whole 9 to 5 thing, and I tried it. That's a story for another day. The law school guy, kudos. I tried that for a second. It didn't work. But no, I really, my day-to-day is whatever I want it to be, and I work for who I want to work with. I've reached a point where when people interview me to work for them, I'm also interviewing them to work with me, and I've said no to some big bands, and it's just artist team, kind of important.
So what I'm talking about really at this point is just the granular work of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Like your phone calls and emails are basically soliciting avails or routing tours.
I do. A lot of agents every agent has a different way of doing things. Mine, when I plan a tour, a lot of research, but I do a lot of stuff that crosses into managing territory, and I will put together the entire package myself. Usually most of my artists, I prefer to not have a manager because I end up clashing with the managers a lot. And so I end up, when I put together the package, I will sit there and I will spend hours on Google Maps routing out this thing based on how long I want the drives to be and where I think the right markets should be for this particular package that I'm doing. And then I will call specific people or I'll email specific people. A lot of agents will go out and go for the highest bidder, and they'll send out like a mass email that will go around. I don't do that. I hate that. I know exactly who's going to do my shows before I even start, which is why that mud and water thing is so interesting, because I have people that reach out to me and they're like, I want you to send people here. And my response is usually no. But sometimes I I'll get an idea where like, well, maybe this will work in Baton Rouge or something. And those people in particular wanted to pony up a lot of money to do a show that I'm announcing tomorrow. I could say it up here. The Queers and Dwarves are playing in New Orleans, and they wanted that tour in Baton Rouge. And I just didn't think that they would cover the guarantee. I don't like to put my bands in a position where I wonder if they're going to get paid and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of me sitting around going, will this work? Will this won't work? And I can bounce ideas off the actual bands or their managers if they have them, and then the people that work for me, and then sometimes some random stranger in a bar if that comes up.
Now, Dan, you're not working for Steve Vai anymore,
No.
but you want to talk a little bit about your present experience, because I think it's quite relevant to perhaps music industry methodology anyway. But would you talk a little bit about your present situation as well?
You mean what I'm doing now?
What you're doing now?
I'm just in between. I do a little bit of consulting stuff with friends that are in bands and things like that, but I've been just taking a break on things for a little bit.
Okay.
But
All right.
That's awesome.
Braden, you want to talk a little bit
I
about
want to go on tour with Queers and Dwarves, though. That sounds, what was it called? Queers and Doors and...
The Queers and the Dwarves. You will.
Sounds amazing.
You will probably get laid and do lots of drugs.
Braden, what are you doing?
I don't know if it's appropriate to say. No, I answer a lot of phone calls and send a lot of emails as well, and it's not the same every day.
Right.
I guess like I could run you through sort of like what I did today, maybe a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think that's instructive.
I had some stuff from Harry Fox agency this morning on my desk that was like people requesting mechanical licenses. So I issued a mechanical license to some company that wanted to license one of our songs, and then like we had an artist that's going to Brazil tomorrow on tour, so I needed to bring him some CDs so we could have some stuff with him to sell. So I met up with him and had him sign some paperwork for that, and then I don't know, working on just like managing our database of information about all of our songs, publishing information and stuff like that, and maintaining the inventory. I kind of like oversee all the inventory of our stock of CDs and make sure that we're okay on everything. And
so you have something of a dashboard that you kind of refer to on a regular basis, something like, you're obviously fielding phone calls, you're dealing with email, but you also have other areas that you're always kind of checking in with.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the local retail, we have a lot of different non-traditional retailers in the city, in addition to just the record stores and stuff, making sure they're okay. And I also, because I have video experience, if I have free time, I'll do some video work or photography work, editing, stuff like that. So it's a lot of different things every day.
Okay, cool. Patrick, life in law school is being underwater, basically, right?
It's probably fitting that I'm on this end of the table because I'm the opposite end of the spectrum from what that sounds like. I wake up at 6:30 every morning and I go straight to school. And I'm reading when I'm not in class, and then I'm in class, and then I'm reading when I'm not in class, and then I'm reading while I'm eating lunch, and then I go to the gym for an hour, and I go home, and I'm reading till I go to sleep, and then I do that again.
And if that sounds good to you,
and then
you can go to law school.
Occasionally, every few months, I'm writing like a 40-page paper in 11-point font, single-spaced, and so that's a nice treat.
Make them want to do this. There we go.
So that sounds like the kind of life for you.
Yep.
And
now you know why lawyers make big money, because we owe it to them.
We owe it to them.
For the time they spent in law school. What were you guys involved with while you were here? Tom, you want to start? Like when you were at Loyola, what were you doing here?
Do you want me to be honest?
Well, no.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. At Loyola, you were involved with surely you were involved with things.
Yeah, no, I know, absolutely. I used to butt heads with Jay Crudy all the time. I can tell you that.
Who doesn't?
It's one of his studio TAs. I know you're there. That's why I said it. I'll keep the stories to a minimum about that. But no, I started 2004, and then Katrina happened, and I was still here through that. And after Katrina, I mean, looking back, like Katrina really messed with my head, and I never thought it did at the time. And so I went from being like a person who really cared about school and B pluses and A's to just getting by. My GPA sucked going out, and I skipped a lot of class. I was the kind of guy that you can come up to me and be like, "Hey, want to grab lunch?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's do it." But I did a lot outside of school. Like I was in this band for a long time. I'm still in a band actually, but I don't really play very much with them, called Angry Banana, which I know a lot of you used to come to my shows. It's kind of trippy being up here and seeing you guys in this program, actually. The funny thing about being in Angry Banana and doing all this punk rock stuff was none of the people I went to school with here knew what we were doing or even understood what we were doing in the city of New Orleans and around. And that band got me my start in everything. That's the band that took me on tour, first got me out of this country on tour, and basically taught me how to not only book shows but promote shows. And I mean, we got to a point where we were selling out shows over at the House of Blues, and still under the radar all the time here at Loyola.
Well, yeah, and for that reason, because punk rock's a very tight knit community,
Exactly.
and it's a network, right?
So I always had a chip on my shoulder when I was at Loyola because I would deal with these Loyola bands. No offense, guys. That would go over and all my friends would go see. But the people that would come to my shows were generally younger. And then there were some people at Loyola that would come to my shows, and they were huge. And we was just completely flying under the radar. And it just kind of, that was my main focus. When I started getting closer to graduating, I was like, we're going to take this full time and we're going to go do it. And I had to deal with a lot of politics, a lot of scene politics, a lot of Loyola politics, and then, dealing with 7 people in a ska band, because it was a ska band. That's not easy. And it kind of just, it got me thinking, and eventually I got to a point where I was getting really burnt out from doing everything, every aspect of it. And I'm probably pretty certain, actually I am certain, that there's a lot of you who are in that boat, who are out there doing something and getting burnt out, and you're not even out of school yet. And I got to a point where I literally walked away. I walked away from the band. I walked away from music entirely. And that's when I started dipping in the law stuff. That's a crazy conversation. So yeah, me and civil rights law in the city of New Orleans. But eventually I got back into doing what I'm doing now. But while I was here, that was my focus. My focus was playing music, was learning how to record our own stuff. I did all the producing, I would put the shows together and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that was really it. And that was my life. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it when I was doing it, and totally, came here with my head high all the time, and just kind of faced people who had no idea what I was doing, including teachers. I'll go that far. I had teachers here who thought I was absolutely nuts. Most of them are gone now, so I guess I could start talking about them. But John Snyder had a lot of faith in me, and I know he can be crazy and nuts sometimes, but Snyder had a lot of faith in me, and he would always tell me that, and he kind of followed what I was doing, and just kind of told me to keep going. And
That's a great, that's something great that you were able to take away from Loyola. At least you had to have somebody believe in you.
Yeah, well, that was the cool thing. I mean, now that you said that, Lucas wanted me to talk about this. One thing that, like, Loyola, to me, it's really funny because I feel like a lot of the things I do, I could have done without ever coming here, which is kind of strange to say, since you're in this program and you're paying all this money to be here. However, one thing I really got from this program was to think outside the box on not only how to do this for a living, but how to, just kind of think, how can I take what I'm doing on a daily basis and make money? And I know that sounds so simple. Like, you might just sit around your dorm rooms or, your houses or whatever and think about that. But at first I thought it was so simple. I was like, I'm just going to be in a band. I'm going to go on tour.
Yeah.
It's easy, but once you start doing that and you graduate and, you don't have money for rent and you're living with a girl because she pays half the rent. And sorry, ladies. But no, like I definitely think that part was missed. Like when I graduated, I thought, oh, I'm gonna have a college degree. I can get out here and I can make money doing something. And that wasn't the case at all.
Right.
I got out and I had to do whatever I could to make money. And you know, I did sound at Forum for like a year and a half or 2 years
Right.
between tours. I was in here and doing that, and Snyder paid me to be here, and it was just
Right.
kind of trying to keep me afloat so that I wouldn't, you know.
Right. So again, a network kind of
And-
came to your.
Yeah, no,
came to
really,
your-
it did, and that stuff was really hard too because I would run into people that I had either graduated with that were speaking here or whatever,
right.
and here I am like running sound, you
Right.
know. But they again like they had no idea what I was doing. 'Cause
Right,
They had no
right.
idea that when I would leave the Forum area, I would go on tour and I'd be a rock star for a couple nights or something.
Right.
Even if it wasn't paying well.
Right.
So.
So Daniel, what about you? What did you do when you were here? That what were you involved with while you were at Loyola that sort of led you into?
I would say the last 2 years we certainly made good use of the studio, especially as it was coming together in rock bands and whatnot. But really, I generally just threw myself into the coursework.
Right.
And I took a lot of courses in the liberal arts, outside of music as well.
Yeah.
That I thought were interesting, more than I needed to, I took.
Right. And at Favored Nations, then, like, when you did that, when you were working for Steve Vai, how did that stuff come into effect? How did it come into play?
I was in a band in LA, and a buddy of mine who I actually hadn't seen in 10 years was working. We went to school with Steve's kids, but they were a lot younger than me. I didn't know them, but he knew them. And he called me because he was running Digital Nations, which is their digital offshoot.
Yeah.
And he called me and said, I've been watching your band, and I've seen you guys are playing a lot of shows, and you're doing really well. And I showed Steve, and we want you to come in and talk about maybe signing up with Digital Nations and being a band on our roster. And I went in there, and I didn't run the band.
Yeah.
It wasn't my band.
Yeah,
They didn't
yeah.
want. That was a whole other thing.
Right.
But I started kind of interning there. And actually, to pay bills at the time, I was doing fitness. I was working with little kids who were like special needs kids and doing fitness with them. So he had a gym that he just put into his house, Steve did.
Right.
And I think he just hired me because he wanted somebody to work out with. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. But to be honest, but I really did. He learned quick enough that I had chops as far as business was concerned. And
Right.
then the manager at the time got a job to go run Ronnie James Dio's record.
Right.
This was like 2 weeks before Ronnie James Dio died, too.
Right.
And he left, and Steve was going to do something in Holland and said, I need somebody to cover for 2 weeks. And I did it, and I did a good enough job that he put me in charge of everything. I was there for 2
And you
years.
feel like the background that business background that you're referring to.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, it was a great foundation. I mean, a lot of it, like he said, is once you get thrown into it,
Yeah.
it's baptism by fire.
You're
I mean,
totally right, though. Like the fact that you got hired to work out with someone. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna take that literally. That's how it happens.
Oh,
People
yeah.
don't
yes.
get it.
I mean,
That's
yeah.
it.
You don't know what form an opportunity is going to come in.
Yeah, right.
And there were, I wanted to say no. I was thinking I was going to say no because I felt I was in over my head because it was international.
Yeah.
It was physical product. It was
Right.
digital. It was 65 artists.
Right.
135 product. DVDs, CDs, vinyl.
Right.
I thought I was over my head, but I said, you just jump into it.
Yeah, and you can do
just,
one thing at a time, and
Well,
Yeah,
kind of. I
knock it
mean,
off.
we weren't staffed enough to do one thing at a time, really, because it was a crazy workload. But I knew I should take the opportunity, and I did. And what I didn't know going into it, which I feel was a lot because of this school and this program, you figure out when you screw up real bad, and then you learn your lesson.
right. And
Or
you also,
or you get lucky and you get it right.
it probably teaches you. I mean, if you're like other people, you learn what to do when you screw up real bad.
Yeah.
How to deal with that with some element of grace.
You blame
and
someone else.
decency and, yeah, exactly.
I could tell
Blame
you
someone else.
the most hilarious stories about screwing up and then covering your own ass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those are the moments that
Oh yeah.
those are the moments that kind of tend to define you in the business. So you can screw people, but only so many people because the business just isn't that big.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to.
That's right.
That's true, but that's one thing that we were talking about is I remember being here, and we were talking about the music, and it was always like the music industry that's waiting out there for you, and how it's this big bad, they're just waiting to take your money, and they'll sign you because they don't want the other label to sign you, and then they'll drop you just to screw with the other guys, and they'll take your money. But you learn as you get out, and especially as you go higher and higher up as far as the food chain in business there, that most people really do love the music business. They want to do good work.
Right.
They also want to make a profit. It is a business. You can't blame anyone for that. But it wasn't certainly this idea that I had or the people I knew here had of these sharks that were just waiting to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
leave you for dead. It wasn't like that. So,
Yeah, right. Braden.
I don't know. I could disagree.
I'm
with
sure
that.
the punk scene is a
well-
lot different.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of both.
Yes.
It's like anything else. There's balance. There's a lot of people that are mean people, and there are a lot of people who are really nice people.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who are fighting for their job, they tend to give you more trouble. But when you move up and you're dealing with people who have a real secure, I mean, if there is such thing as a secure spot in the music industry, but I mean, are well known and have made their name and have a long history of good work, those are the people that they're not going to mess with you. They just they're in it for the right reasons.
Well, and as it happens, I think that if they're in a position of stability, it's because they've understood that creating win-win deals is the only
Yes.
way you actually
Very well
last.
said.
So,
Very well said.
You don't get stable if you don't make things win-win.
That's true. If nobody wants to work with you, you're going to have a hard time making, a living.
Right, right. Braden, how about you? The things that you dealt with here that sort of served you. I guess your video background certainly here and working for a nonprofit here played a role.
Yeah, I would say, I was really heavily involved in video. When I was a student here, after studying for a while, I didn't really have any intention of working in the music industry because I was like, it just doesn't, it doesn't look like it's good, like, especially the record industry. I never thought I would work for a record label because I was like, as a student, I was just like,
Yeah.
nobody's ever going to sell music ever, it's just
yeah.
going to be free, for all time.
That's so funny, yeah.
I remember when you were having those debates because we were both working at Forum. So
Yeah.
Braden used to be like, I hate this shit. I'm going to St. Louis to teach.
Yeah, so
That's the real Braden. He
yeah,
doesn't want
that's
to
the
let
real
it
me.
out.
I do hate this shit.
But as it turns out, right?
No, so yeah, I did a lot of video. I did some internships with Tipitina's, which is a venue in town, and I did intern with Basin Street Records, where I work now,
Yeah.
for like a summer.
So that internship kind of familiarized them with you.
Yeah, I mean that I actually met the owner and my boss now actually was teaching. He taught my intro course.
Oh, wow.
For he was here for a semester and just taught the course. So that's actually how I met him, and I was like a really good student, so he remembered me.
Right.
So it really paid off in the long run for me to be a good student, which
Right.
I also never thought would be worthwhile at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, he's right. You don't like.
Well, look,
After you graduate, your grades,
Yeah,
Anybody really
well,
care?
let's say, I mean, I've said that to my classes many times. You don't need a degree to be in the music industry.
Right.
So, why are you here? And it's
I wish
obviously,
you were my teacher.
But it's to have the background and the knowledge that you need to be able to save your own ass and to sort of be a step ahead of most people. And I think that the other funny thing is that nobody's ever going to ask you to see your grades, but the sort of the work ethic that you set up for yourself when you're here, or the methodology that you set up for yourself is going to be really instructive to you one way or the other. Either it's going to show you what you're good at or what you're not good at, or what you fit into or what you don't fit into. And just as Tom knows that he never wants to go 9 to 5, I mean, but Patrick just went the other way and ended up, going 6:30 to midnight, reading and doing terrible things. No, okay.
reading's not that.
No, but he prepared his own path the same way, and I think that's kind of what we're talking about in this line of conversation is like, how did what you were doing here kind of pave the way for what you ended up doing, and certainly finding a niche player in the music in the recorded music business was kind of like, yeah, they're going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, it was really lucky because I mean, I would run into him multiple times, in the 5 years that I'd worked for him, just talking with him, sort of keeping a professional relationship. And then, after I finished volunteer teaching last year, I looked for a job in St. Louis for around a month or so with no bites, and then somebody finally was like, "Why don't you send some feelers out to New Orleans?" And I happened to email him. He sent me an email, 10 minutes later that said, "You've contacted me at a very good time.
Wow.
Call me on Wednesday."
Wow,
And
that's
so
great.
it was just something like that. Who would have thought my teacher from my
Yeah.
freshman year at Loyola would be my boss and give me
Yeah.
a real job.
So your freshman year sort of led you into your real gig, which is pretty funny. So Patrick, in your instance, your senior year kind of put you into business, right? You were sitting in senior seminar with David Buttry and started talking about putting together a business. Tell me first of all about that, the process you went through to launch Rabbit Hole, and then the genesis that led you out of the day-to-day for Rabbit Hole and the decision making, with regard to how you're involved and how you're not because of law school.
Yeah. Well, I think it all kind of starts further back. I think I was lucky to actually kind of get every advantage that you're supposed to out of this program. Because, it's really 4 years that you don't get anywhere else in your life where you can just try random things and there aren't a whole lot of significant consequences if one of them doesn't pan out. Like, I would suspect that the vast majority of people don't have kids and that sort of thing. So that is a serious freedom that you have while you're here that isn't necessarily ever going to happen again. And so when I first got here, I thought I wanted to play guitars, and I saw kids who actually knew how to play guitars, and I was like, no, we're not doing that. And then I kind of started to think that I was interested more in production. But for my first 2 years, I'd never really took action to become involved pursuing a goal like that. I think when I first kind of broke my complacency was when I was in some of Gabor's film classes, and I really kind of understood practically what I could do with that stuff. And then I worked on some stuff with Matt Bauerschmidt and G-Eazy and those guys, and that really got me kind of meeting people around the city. And then my junior and senior year, I got really serious and knew that I wanted to do something kind of more on the business end of things. And so I was just kind of constantly trying to come up with ideas. And I think the advantage of junior and senior year, the programs that they put you into with entrepreneurship and music management and senior seminar and that sort of thing, is that I think it's really helpful that the school is trying to make you go from okay, you've been kind of fooling around for 3 years now, but this ends, what are you going to do afterwards? And I was really grateful that senior seminar makes you come up with a plan for when you're going to graduate. Right. And I think that if you're in that class, the most valuable thing you can do is take it seriously and try to treat it like it really is what you're going to do afterwards. Because I think that's kind of the biggest pitfall while you're in college is, and it's kind of a stereotype, but the idea that, it's never really going to end. It doesn't matter. People always say it will end, but that doesn't feel real until you're a month out from graduating. You're oh, it is gonna end. I need to make money.
I'm seeing that look on people's faces right about now.
Yeah. So my advice really, I don't want to preach or anything, but lose your complacency as quickly as possible. And this is something that was told to me when I first got here, and it didn't even register immediately. I think it's one of those things. I think everyone at this point probably has something their parents told them, you'll understand this when you're older. And when you're a kid, you're no, I'm going to feel exactly the same way about this issue 20 years down the road. And then, all of a sudden when you're oh, holy shit, they were right. But so, pretend I'm your parents right now and, get involved as early as possible, because 5 years from now you will go, that's what I was supposed to do. He was right, because people told me that, and it took me 2 years to really get involved, because ultimately the only way you get anything done in an industry that's as sort of amorphous and without boundaries as the music industry is that people know who you are and generally kind of what you can do, and they have a reason to trust that you're going to actually do that thing. Yeah. And the only reason anyone is going to know who you are is if you're actually getting involved. And so one of my biggest advantages was the fact that I ended up developing a close relationship with John Snyder. I know he helped a lot of us out. I think I was working for the same center as Braden part-time. My first way that I earned money while we were launching Rabbit Hole, because obviously you don't make money while you're launching a business, I was paid to alphabetize John's 10,000 records and LPs and build shelves for an entire summer. John Snyder supported me for like an entire 6 months just doing random tasks around his house for like 6 months. But he never would have, I don't think he ever would have paid me to just move things around in his house if I hadn't established that I was, working towards something and someone in whom he could put some confidence. So
Right.
I would say get involved on campus early and in the community, whether or not it's on campus or in the community. Don't think that I used to wait around thinking I want to manage a band, but I only want to manage this particular kind of band, so I'm just waiting for that band to show up. If you know a band and you think you might be interested in managing a band, manage that band, because that's really the reality of what it is that you need to start thinking in terms of what you can do today. I wouldn't wait any longer than you have to, because everything becomes an order of magnitude more difficult when you're outside of sort of the college bubble that you have here.
Right.
A big
don't agree with
aspect.
that.
Well, I was going to say a big aspect of the difference of you being a college student approaching a professional or a business.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested in doing this, and you just being some person who's saying, "Will you give me a job?"
Yeah,
a dude who's
right.
out of college. You're just another person, with a degree.
Yeah, why you?
But if you're a college student, they're like, "Oh, you're a student. We'll help you out," and then you immediately have a foot in the door or something like that.
All right. So Tom, you disagree? Why?
I only disagreed with the notion. I mean, I will completely say sure, get started early. Why not? But at the same time, I have a really, really weird outlook on life. I mean, if you get me, I might be the oldest person at this table, just slightly. And I mean, I'm about to turn 27. And if you got me 3 years ago, I wanted to do something else completely different than what I'm doing right now. And even 3 years ago, I wasn't in college. I was already out for 2 years. And so I don't necessarily think that it's do or die right now. I really don't. I'm more of the belief that you'll do it when you're ready. Everyone has a breaking point. And I mean, believe me, if I had more time, I would go in depth about my breaking points of how rock bottom hit sometimes. And it's a pretty interesting story here and there of some places I've woken up, been like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina in some stranger's basement, and I mean, that kind of stuff. You get to a point where you're like, all right, I just got to do it. And that's what clicked for me,
Right.
It wasn't in school, and I wasn't ready to really address it in school either.
Right.
I wasn't. I will blatantly say that. At school, I probably should have taken a couple of years off before getting involved, but I don't regret going to school. And kind of Patrick was saying, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Productivity over there, I definitely, sorry.
You're going to be successful. Yeah.
No, yeah, he's going to be great. He's going to be way more successful. No, now I completely forgot what I was going to say. I was on a roll too, damn it.
Well, you were saying that your totally bizarre path is the one you recommend to everyone.
Oh, well, I was going to say, yes, I do actually. No, but what I was saying was, he mentioned you're going to look back on this and regret not doing it. I don't regret anything.
Right.
Anything of my college
if I could just say
stuff.
something, I mean, I think honestly,
You might be saying the same thing.
it's great to know what it is you want to do. I think we're all here because we have some general idea of what it is we want to do. And I think we have all heard that what it is we want to do in this room is like winning the lottery or whatever. I think that's bullshit. But at the same token, you have a general idea of what it is you want to do. So your job here is to hone that down, figure out what it is generally it is you want to do, work really hard, learn all you can about the business and more. Go and take as many classes on different things, religion, politics, critical thinking was the most important class I took here probably. Do all of that and then make sure, almost as important as all of that, if not more important, is you live in the greatest city in the country, if not one, if not one of the greatest in the world, to go out. You got to make sure that you go out and make crazy memories and have fun and go to as many of the bars as are, when somebody says, oh, I love New Orleans because of this place, make sure you go to that place or you're going to come back like I did 4 years later and I have to go through this checklist of things I didn't get to and I'm doing it now. So go out, have fun, make memories. Those are the things you'll remember. There's a world out there waiting for you, but be ready for it when you're done here. You have time to do both. I can promise you that.
And I think it's important that very good. And if you, you know, and if you start nosing your way into things that you think you want to do, you know, there is plenty of room to fail. I mean, to Patrick's point, I feel like you're okay to sort of try things and then go, they didn't work out. I'm going to try something else. That works out.
Right.
That works out.
I mean,
well.
I want to clarify because I don't necessarily get the impression that we're taking inconsistent positions. But what I'm saying, like, don't just wait. I'm saying, like, go ahead and make your mistakes now, because I mean, as I said, like, I came here thinking I wanted to play guitar, and that's not at all like the direction of my life now. So, like, to the extent that what I'm saying is that there is a time window, I think you just need to not just sit on the couch. I think you need to go out and make mistakes to figure out what it is you want to do. I never would have realized that I wanted to be in law school if I wasn't out there trying out all sorts of different things before that.
Right. And, you know, just to follow up on that, you're not actually thinking at this point that you're going into entertainment law, because you sort of revealed something about yourself in law school. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, when I got to law school, you know, suddenly you're viewing the world like you've been viewing the world in the little microcosm of the music industry for a very long time in here, and you're thinking about all of the peculiar issues that arise in that context. But in law school, suddenly you're viewing, you know, the problems of a much broader portion of our society, and so you can get taken down a different path. But what I will say is that what I learned here has been invaluable to what I do there, even if it's kind of counterintuitive because it's not music stuff. It's that before I came here, I was not, I didn't understand the importance of setting like goals and just working towards getting to them. And then even if you fail or change along the way, but just setting goals and trying to track your progress.
That's my next question, actually, is how does goal setting impact each of your businesses? I mean, or, you know, does it play any kind of role in what you do, goal setting or setting milestones or targets and things like that? So you speak about that, and then everybody else feel free to jump in if you have anything to say about that.
I mean, it's been massively important to me, and it sounds so simple, but it wasn't until I actually learned how to do it that, you know, my life changed a lot. Like when I was younger here, I used I had the idea that things just kind of like happen to you and you just wait for things to happen and that's what goes on. And like Dr. Goolsby one day explained to me what an internal locus of control is versus an external one. And if you have an internal one, you kind of accept responsibility for the good and the bad things that happen to you. And you can take it, I mean, no one's at either extreme of that scope, but then in management and senior seminar, the fact that you're taught to set a goal and then kind of map it out and how are we going to get there and think about breaking it into little actionable chunks and that sort of thing. Yeah. That's been tremendously valuable, not only to how we started the business. I mean, we literally took like the things that were said in class and just applied them in the real world, and that worked. And in law school, I mean, it's exactly the same thing. It's this gigantic amount of stuff that you have to break into chunks that you can get done the way that you can manage your time. So, I mean, to the extent that I learned how to organize my thinking and sort of my behavior in this program, I mean, that's been essential to everything I've done since I left.
Right. You know, Braden, you're the director of operations at Basin Street. I can't imagine that you're dealing with overseeing operations and not thinking about goals and targets and milestones.
I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, I think a lot of our big picture goals, fortunately, have been addressed before I even started.
Right.
I've been there about 6 months. And, I mean, a lot of them have been realized, sort of. And I think one of the advantages we have for a lot of our artists is that we signed them with built-in audiences and built-in following. Right. So it was just a lot of that, you know, building from the ground up work is done. But I mean, my day is just a list of, it's a checklist of to-dos, it's just like constantly reminding myself, all right, what needs to be done? Like what needs to be done today? What needs to be done within the next month? You know, what needs to be done, you know, by the next release. That's kind of, I usually operate kind of on a like release by release schedule and just sort of like, what are we going to do for this release? How are we going to, you know, and obviously the ultimate goal is just sell the most music.
Well, and even though you're
add value to the company,
and even though the artists have built-in audiences, the issue is to acquire new fans, right?
Yeah,
you're always looking to build.
Acquiring new fans is a big part of it. I mean, and just Yeah, I mean,
and to
we're
retain.
retain. I mean, there's just so many different things that I can choose to focus on. So a lot of it is just for me. I like one of my big focuses at the new year. Like I kind of sat down with my boss and we kind of did like a little review and talked about like. I kind of asked him. I was like, "What do you want me to focus on more? Because I'm busy all the time, but I can choose for some of the stuff that I'm doing." And he's like, "Well, one area that I'd really like to expand is our sync placement, sync licensing, and just see if you can increase revenue in that area."
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of the things I've been focusing on so far this year is like get in contact with music supervisors and build relationships with them and just see what happens in the future. Be aware of where our music would fit in and where, what other potential, sync options could be that I'm not even thinking of.
Right.
So things like that, and it's just a lot of it though is just release based, almost like a system that we have worked out by now.
Yeah.
And getting reviews for the albums and making sure it gets into the right people's hands before the release and
Right.
how are we going to promote it. That's a big just
Right.
endless list of things you can.
Yeah. Calendars and spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, which are great task managers.
Yeah,
That's a great way
definitely.
to see, something has to happen by a certain date. That's basically defining your actions, right? Daniel, how about you? Goal
I
setting?
mean, we had similar jobs. I mean, it's deadlines are helpful for goals. I mean,
Yeah.
when somebody else gives you a deadline that if you don't meet it,
Yeah.
it's a real problem. But so I also did it release by release. I would say I need the sales sheet by this time. I need to have my marketing covered by here. I need to have artwork and masters here. I need to hire PR at this point. I need to make sure I'm manufacturing by this date. All of that. And sometimes we were doing 2-3 products at a time, and it was just me.
Right, right.
So that was a lot of work. But I think it's whether it's a record or anything that you're doing really, as far as Steve Vai he was always talking about goals and being myopic and being it wasn't positive thinking, but it was just understanding it. And the thing with, like I said, if it's a record or anything in life, you have to know what your goal is. You'll have to know you'll have to have things that show you've reached it. You'll have to know
Measurable.
You'll have to know that you've reached it when you get there.
Yeah.
And then you got to write out for yourself what you have to do to get there and like pinpoint it every day what you have to do. Like for me, if there's a little bit of slack in there where I go, I can maybe do this then,
Yeah.
that's a fallback plan. And if I give myself any bit of a fallback plan, I'm just going to fall back
Right.
100% of the time. So you pinpoint it every single day. And then it's really easy. Then it's just doing your job and it's easy.
Yeah, because you have a
It's not
concrete
just-
item,
yeah.
a concrete actionable item.
It's not just with work. I mean, you have to know that you've gotten there, or else
Yeah.
you're just going to drive yourself crazy because
Yeah.
there's always better and bigger and all of that. So
Yeah.
it's really taking a lot of time to plan it and figure it out for yourself.
Right. How do goals and measurement impact you, Tom? You issue contracts, right? You take deposits, right? You do routings. You run a calendar. So what do you do? What do you do to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks?
Lots of reminders, lots
Yeah.
of computerized reminders. But a lot of it's in my head too. I mean, I have a crazy good memory, and when it starts to fail, me and my business will probably fall apart. And one of the things that my assistant is helping me with is actually getting my database organized so other people could read it.
Right.
It's a very big project because of the way my brain does work. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, people don't read bios, and nobody knows who I am here. But I work for the Ataris, the Queers, Screeching Weasel. I just picked up the Sonics. You guys probably have no idea who the Sonics are.
Oh my God!
You
I know
might.
Sonics, of course.
Yeah, I know. You know who the Sonics are. And I'm really stoked to be working with the Sonics, actually. But I managing like a bunch of schedules, and I do worldwide. A lot of agents do North America only, and I do complete worldwide schedules for my bands, and it's awesome because that way they have one point. Like I'm the contact person at all times, and I know everything that's going on. And if I need to hire a agent or whatever, I'm the one that does it out there. But basically, for me, I have to. I talk to the bands and I'll set up with them like, well, what do we want? That's always like the bottom line is what the hell do you want with your career?
And there's your goal right there.
Exactly. And so we know exactly what we want to do. We plan it out probably by a year, you know, or at least I do. Sometimes the bands don't care, and they're just like, all right, Tom, just go with it. Everything's going fine, you know, and it's so really, like, for me, like, that's how I figure out if I'm reaching the goals is I set them, which is just simply like, all right, we need to be doing these kind of rooms with these kind of things, and are we there?
Right.
You know, I track all ticket counts. I track, you know, sometimes when you said deposits, sometimes I don't even take them, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. This camera's going around the world. I bet you some promoters are watching me because of my Facebook status. Sometimes I don't even send contracts.
Right.
You know, I just, that's the thing about this industry. Everyone's always like, oh, you need your paperwork trail. Truth is, if you
need
your
your paperwork
reputation is
trail.
everything. What did you say?
I will say,
What did you just say?
You said you need your paperwork trail.
There goes the lawyer.
Yeah.
well, honestly, I mean, it seems like there's a big differential. I mean, as far as what our theories are, but you are the only one, as far as I can tell, working in the live business, which is totally different. So, I mean, there are going to be different viewpoints here between guys that work on the record end and
also
booking
talking,
and
if I'm not doing paperwork on something, that is there's a specific reason why there's not paperwork, you know, and if you get to a certain point, like I do so many tours and so many people talk to me, even though they're not mine, you know, that if somebody screws me over, everyone's going to find out. And I guarantee you they're going to be out of this business really quick.
Right.
So we talked about like making mistakes and covering your own asses. There's like one time I could tell you this story where this guy called me a liar. I did not lie. He is out of this business. It was the one time I went on the whole blacklist thing. I flipped the switch where my ego went out of control and he got fired. His boss called him up and fired him.
Right.
You know, Green Bay, Wisconsin. That guy hates my guts. You know.
he's dead.
So you guys have an overview of these guys. You guys now have some sense of who they are, and we don't have that much time left. So I want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. Anybody have any questions for any of these ex-students?
Graduates.
I see a hand.
Nothing.
No hand. What's up, Evan? Evan.
What is directed to you, sir? I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Who?
I'm Daniel. Yeah.
What exactly do you do and how? I didn't catch exactly how you apply what you learned here in real life.
Okay, right now I'm not doing what I was doing as far as what I've been talking about it.
Yeah, what were you doing? It's like
I was running.
like all the way to like what you're doing now.
Oh, okay. No, I was running a record label, so we were doing physical manufacturing, physical product and digital, all things associated with a record label. We didn't get into the live business too much, but everything as far as the planning of going into a label, a couple of them I recorded, so I produced in a way. They were live records, so it wasn't really that kind of a audio production in the technical sense, but so really all the aspects that go into running a full-time record label, the big catalog and multi-platinum artists, lots of. It was a lot of work, and as far as what I used, what I learned here that I used there, well, I mean, first of all, just a foundation. I mean, obviously, having a knowledge of publishing and licensing, and
Well, and you talked about the humanities side as well.
well, yeah, I mean, that's one thing too. Is I had to hire a lot of people to come in and work with us on projects too. If two people were equally qualified, but one was just a more interesting person, I would hire the more interesting person. Because if you're going to be in a room with them, 18 hours a day, and we did put in too many 18-hour days, you're going to want to have somebody to talk to that's interesting. But I also recommend being a jack of all trades. If you can do website design and you can do Photoshop, you know how to do email blasts, you know how to do all that, you have job security.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But as far as what I learned, I mean, really just the general foundation about how the business works. I learned how to have a course load here and how to build habits, because the habits that you make here are the habits you're going to take with you everywhere. So if that frightens you now, then maybe do something about that. But that's one big thing. I mean, just learning the trade and learning the craft and reading more than was given to us here.
Right.
Go above and beyond what it is they give you here. And the other thing the most important thing was just being thrown into the mix, because once you're thrown into the mix, you have no choice but to learn.
Right.
That's the best I could probably.
Any other questions? Anybody? Well, I'm sorry, did you have a question? Yes. Sorry, Jack.
different stores. So what is your label doing now with like technology moving towards?
Talking to me?
Braden.
All of our digital we do all of our digital through IOTA, which has just become the Orchard. They joined together. They actually did their dashboard switch over today. So I was just I'm learning the Orchard right now. So all of that, they just distribute to all digital retailers for us on our behalf, which saves me a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it available everywhere for us. And they do a really good job. I think it's a service that's worth it.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in getting more of that technological side, totally look for a job with them.
Yeah.
Believe in it.
All right, well, we're out of time.
Wait,
What-
1 second. I have a really cool, no, hold on. I think this would be cool.
Yeah.
I have an internship opportunity for somebody, and somebody preferably who wants to go to Europe with a band. And if you do this right, then I will probably pay your entire way to Europe. If you don't do this right, I will gladly tell your internship supervisor that you failed. So if you're game
start the line.
and you want to do something with punk rock, then come find me.
Yeah. All right, well, please thank these guys for being here. Appreciate it.